Hello again, everybody. Your old buddy Steve Simonson coming back today again with another Awesomers podcast episode. Now, we're on a Founder Foundations mini-series journey, and we're about midway through where I promised basically, hey, listen, I'm going to carve out some time and I'm going to give you a whole month worth of insight and even like a blueprint on how you can create a leadership training program for your team. And each episode, I've broken into subject matter that you should map into your own training, not just for yourself. It's a roadmap for you, like, guide you through the wilderness, but also a roadmap for your team. I'm so passionate about having, bringing a team up and developing your team. Nothing pleases me more than when I see people that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years, and maybe they were, I was the first job that they had, or even just any job along the way, and I see them go on to great heights and accomplish great things. It just makes me so happy, and in many ways, I'm proud of them for, taking those opportunities that we gave them, which was like, hey, work hard, do stuff, and along the way, the benefit is you're going to learn and you're going to be exposed to systems and process and kind of a complex ecosystem that is and chaotic ecosystem in many ways that is hard to find. Like, we are not a place that people go to work like in a factory and put in one rivet and then the next thing comes down and you put another rivet and the next thing. No, we have a very wide ranging set of businesses. Certainly historically that has been even more true, but even going forward, there are different business units that have to be intermingled with one another. And that creates kind of a fun, unique way of living and being a part of a team, because it's never really the same thing. It doesn't mean there are not some things that have to be done on a daily repetitious basis, but it also means that it's enough variety to really make people who enjoy that sort of thing happy. By the way, there's plenty of people who do not like that environment. People who've worked for me who very close to me as well, that they've come in and they're like, gosh, I really want to do a great job, but this is just like, I can't keep track of all these spinning plates. And we're like, no problem. Sorry. We're not building torture chambers over here. This is how we do stuff. It fits some people. It doesn't fit other people. No judgment. I thank them. I appreciate them. And, sometimes, as long as somebody doesn't do something with venom or spite, then I feel that I'm responsible for creating whatever a poor experience they had, certainly in a job setting or environment. And it doesn't mean I walk around feeling guilty all day. It just means, oh, we could do better. We need to rationalize and flesh out these processes. So today we're in this kind of marketing introduction phase where we've just gone through a bunch of the preceding episodes. And it brings us really to what I would think of as the brand identity, your brand image. And those are two separate concepts, but I want to pay close attention to both the overt and the obvious and the more subtle, nuanced aspects of your brand. So the brand image is kind of clearly like the logo, right? If there's a logo, let's see, I guess it's over here. There's a logo, that's not so subtle. That is a brand image. Your brand identity is actually, what does that mean to the customer? It's not what the logo is, right? The logo is just a marker, literally a physical mark that you've decided, I want people to associate my brand and all the things that we represent in this little digital mark or graphical mark. It could be a physical statue, I don't care. But that is a face part of the program. The identity is what people actually believe that it represents in their mind. Like, oh, this means, like if you see the Awesomers, I'll try to point to it here. If you see the Awesomers logo for the visual folks at home, does that mean, oh, I'm going to learn something and maybe have a chuckle? Or does it mean this guy's boring and I don't want to tune in, right? It means something to a lot of people. And depending on what it means to you, I'm guessing you appreciate what you're hearing. Otherwise, you wouldn't stick around and listen. This same thing applies to any other brand. It doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer like Apple. It doesn't matter. I guess they're more of a product designer, the manufacturing, the outsource. But let's say a manufacturer like Ford, right? They make vehicles, or Tesla, they make vehicles, and they're physically manufacturing them, and they have honed their image, in the case of Ford, over, a century, in the case of Tesla over, the last, say, 15, 20 years. And now when you see that logo, just the logo, whether it's on a vehicle or a magazine or in an airport, just walking by, it conjures up some feelings. Now, because Tesla is relatively new, I'm going to leave that to the side, but Ford has been around for, as I said, a century. There's some people who hate Fords, and they say that Ford, when they see that logo, it means found on road dead, right? That's what the little acronym for Ford means to them. And there's other people, it's like, my grandfather had a Ford, my dad had a Ford, I've got a Ford, and that's how we do it in this family, right? So those are quite different perceptions, but that is how branding works. I want to take a little bit of a counterintuitive approach to brand image. I want your identity to mean more than the logo itself. If there's anything that we've witnessed in the past 20 years, with Google kind of running our lives, right? The searches begin and end on Google typically. Google changes their logo freaking every day, right? And in the old days, let's say pre-90s and before, pre-turn of the century, there was a real big book, and this still exists at all companies, about what's the logo Pantones, what's the color, what's the acceptable style, size, font, right? All of these things that were so rigid. Like at IBM, if you dared to make a different color blue or a different size or even just a different font, then you would be just shellacked by whoever was in charge of the the program at the time. There's no room for any sort of error. But Google has kind of helped us realize that, you know what? When you see kind of the Google mixed into all these various logos that they put on their homepage, and they will often change it around holidays or election days or this or that, it really just says, you know what? I see Google in all things, right? That's part of their objective. And my point to you is, if you spend weeks or months on your logo early on, I think you're wasting a bunch of time. That's the counterintuitive part. I think initially you should, this is again how I would do it. You decide how you want to do it. But instead of, getting into all these subtle touch points, about, well, it's got to be this color because this represents royalty, or it's got to be this color because this represents happiness. It's like, just pick something you like and move on. Like, go get, a bunch of Upwork or Fiverr people to make you 5 or 6 choices. Pick one. Get all the iterations of it, every graphic format, every style. You can even animate it, whatever you want to do, and just stick with that and get moving. I don't want you spending a ton of time on this early on, because nobody cares except you. And as much as it may be important downstream and later on, this is not the time to waste a bunch of energy on it. I remember, we had a logo for one of my companies, and we were selling, $40, $50 million at the time. And we had a big investment company, a venture capital firm, and they're like, hey, we want you to go to our brand people, your brand identity and imagery people. And so we're like, hey, yeah, we're just little, stupid entrepreneurs, and you have $2 billion under management. You're smart, we're dumb. Let's go listen to them. And they took us to a really great firm, and they're like, hey, for 80 grand, we'll give you a new logo and a tagline, right? It's like, well, we already got both of those, so why should I spend 80 grand? And, the venture capitalists would pat me on the head and go, hey, Steve, hey, little buddy, you just don't understand, how big businesses work. We need to get all the sensory elements of your brand really tied down so that we can, have a good book and have, consistency among all the different channels we do. And just to be clear, as much as I didn't understand that concept, like, why should I spend $80,000 on this? Their principles were not wrong at the very intellectual level. It's just a question of whether or not we should waste the time and the money on it. By the way, when I said, why should we spend $80,000 on this? They're like, you're burning cash anyway. What's the difference? So we had just done an infusion of venture capital, and we were, doing a bunch of expansion, and we were burning, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month at least. And that was the response that just tickled me. It's like, what's the difference? You're already burning money. So I kind of deferred my judgment. This was a mistake that I made. Instead of me saying, no, this is stupid, we should focus on our core business. I was still at that time the majority holder. I said, well, you know what? I should learn. I should defer my bias and step back and learn. And I will admit, it was a wonderful process. And no question, the agency, worked really hard. And, whether or not I value their efforts at the same way they value it, they're a top flight, world-class agency. The experience was great. It really did help us pull some of our core brand values out and helped us brand things like, I put my name on it. Like that's one of the things that came out of that strategy session, is when they would hear us talk about the business, and here's how we, created product and brand, and here's how we, go to market. They're like, wow, you guys really care. It's like you're signing your name to everything that you do. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I do. And they're like, so you put your name on it, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And it really resonated. And it actually not only became part of that company, but every company since then. So I'm not suggesting that it didn't have value, but what I'm telling you is that timing matters and context matters. There's no point in you going and spending $80,000 unless you already have a giant company and you're really trying to say, well, how do we take this thing, to the public level, and getting your ducks in a row ahead of that. So my message to you today is, I do think that I want your brand image to be locked up, pick one and move on. Then work on your brand identity. Really, what does your brand stand for? That means so much more to me than which font you chose or what color happens to be, the color of periwinkle, because that, makes people think of good things. Keep that side of it, I think, for a later date. Pick something and get on with it, and know that you can change it in the future at any time with virtually no downside, right? Yes, you may have to reprint some literature or signs or packaging or whatever, and you can just do that kind of on a production basis going forward. But golly, when you watch big companies constantly, phone companies changing their name and making new signs and renaming stadiums, it's all ethereal. It doesn't really matter. So my advice, pick something so you can rally everybody around, and then get on with it and focus on identity more so than image. Thank you, everybody. I hope, again, this is valuable. Subscribe, share, save, etc. Please comment. Let us know if this is useful to you. And remember that if you're doing a good job and keeping track of these, this is your roadmap on how you can set up the subject matter you should be studying and the subject matter you should be training on with your team. Thanks, everybody. See you later.